Hello, World Wide Web. I'm Dr. Shado, the internet personality who hasn't been able to do a skit for the entirety of March Mad Max-ness because, hey, no car, but it's time to review the Mad Max we never thought we'd get. Mad Max Fury Road. Coming out a whopping 30 years after Thunderdome, Fury Road was in development hell for quite a lot of that time, quite possibly due to being more based in American production. The first snag came in 2001 with the 9/11 terrorist attack, which fucked up quite a bit for a lot of people. But then, in the subsequent wars and problems with international air travel, it fucked with production even more. And we can't forget the recession kicking off in 2008, managing to take the budget, and surprise, it's dropped in spending power by about 25%. So I guess that does count as another apocalypse between the third and fourth movies. But hey, the point is we eventually got Fury Road. And I got it in 4K, which came out this month, which is so wonderful. If only I was actually able to rip it in 4K. Rant time! Generally, I take the disc and rip it, no problem, and edit the review with said file. I never distribute the raw film elsewhere. I bought the movie instead of downloading it. I am within the restrictions of the law, and everyone wins. Except this time, not only did my main ripping software not work, despite the fact that it is able to decipher H.265 encoding no problem, but I couldn't locate any other ripping software right now that could do the 4K ultra-high definition format. A little digging later, and I found out that the movie studios have been going around threatening lawsuits against ripping software providers who dare to support the UHD format. Even though if they had any legal ground to stand on, they could be able to just sue them for letting you rip DVDs, not just ultra-high definition discs. The resolution doesn't change the law. And also there's the fact that if you want to interpret it so the way they're saying the DMCA technically says if you remove the copy protection, then that is in violation of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, except ripping isn't removing the copy protection, it's reading it through the copy protection. In the same sense, if you're going to say that ripping is not allowed because of the DMCA, by the same token, DVD players aren't allowed because they go through the copy protection. This might sound a little familiar to any of you who are familiar with the Bleem saga. Bleem was a program for PC that allowed you to play PlayStation 1 games on PC with higher resolutions, faster load times, all that stuff. And Sony was like, hey, you're infringing on our copyrights, and they took them to court. And the courts were like, actually, they're not. We rule in their favor. And Bleem was like, yay, and they released a new version, just, another update, just patching it. And then Sony was like, hey, this new version is infringing on our copyright. And the courts were like, no, it's still not. They're still perfectly legally able to do this. And they were like, yay! And then they rinse, all that stuff, until eventually the guys who made Bleem just went the fuck out of business because Sony kept suing them and they couldn't afford the court costs of getting sued constantly, even though they always won the lawsuits. Not to say that there are no ways to get a 4K movie from a disc already anyway. Now, it's only even a headache if you try to stay on the straight and narrow. If you're just going to grab the movie with the least hassle without the studios getting a dime from you, nothing about this effort on their part has changed this for you in the slightest. So by the end of it all, I do have the 4K file. Except that I don't, because the movie wasn't even fucking filmed in 4K. It was filmed in 3K, and then they added the special effects and dropped it down to 2K. Which is better than 1080p by like 80 pixels. I feel like I just broke into Fort Knox to use the give a penny, take a penny tray. So, anyway, enough ranting. Let's take a look at
Misogynist! Hey, you, asshole. Talk about the thing.
Are you fucking serious? Do I have to cover that too? It's several minutes in and I barely even talked about the movie.
Misogynist!
Okay, fine. Who wants another rant about identity politics? We've all seen the articles, dozens of them, talking about how MRAs were en masse going to boycott Fury Road, as it was no more than filthy feminist propaganda masquerading as a guy's flick, as a means to worm its way into their mind and strip them of their masculinity. The articles written about the MRA boycott were so prevalent, it even became a major point in the Nostalgia Critic's reenactment review of Fury Road. The problem is when you actually look into the claims made. There was a total of one article written about how Fury Road was feminist propaganda on Return of Kings, a pickup artist website. They have more articles on them about why men's rights advocates are a bunch of whiny little pussies than they do about Fury Road. The crux of the blog post in question was the fact that Eve Ensler, a prominent feminist and writer of The Vagina Monologues, or as I like to call it, Talk to the Cooch, was specifically brought in as a consultant for the portrayal of the female characters in Fury Road. How much effect she had, I don't know, especially considering there were other consultants they brought in who weren't feminists, but that's pretty much it. Happy now? now that that's over with, I would go into the basic synopsis of the film, but this intro has gone on long enough, so let's take a look at Mad Max Fury Road and actually start talking about the damn movie! It starts off in a bit of a disjointed internal monologue of rambling by Max, played by Tom Hardy, establishing he is mad.
Here they come again, worming their way into the black matter of my brain.
Help us, Max. You promised to help us.
As in, crazy. I mean, otherwise the title could be summed up Angry Guy, Angry Street. The opening is said to be a homage to Mad Max 2's opening, even though they are nothing alike. Mad Max 2 explained the world, then went into a chase. Fury Road has Max talking all crazy-like, before suddenly jumping into his V8 Interceptor, yeah, it's not blown up anymore, and breaking out into a car chase. No idea how he got his Interceptor back, but... it looks like he won't actually be using that throughout the movie. Which makes me wonder why the hell they even put it in there. Or how the hell he found another one after the last of the V8 Interceptors was destroyed in the second movie. Or how he rebuilt it, even though in the third movie didn't have it for the entire... I mean, yeah, it's recognizable, which is why it's confusing me so goddamn much. They really don't explain it in this movie either. There's a fuck ton that goes unexplained. That's fine and all, but as we're watching Max get kidnapped and the Raiders loot his belongings, the only thing we have to go on is the visuals to try and figure out what the story is so far. It ain't a Star Wars scrolling intro, but they do provide a wall of text. Which is pretty much a list of nutrition facts for Max. It's also interesting to note that it seems after World War III, they stopped counting the time in years and started counting in days, and Max is listed as being caught on day 12,045, which divided by 365 comes out exactly to 33. Which only makes sense when you think about the fact that, as originally written, Max was supposed to be played by Mel Gibson and was supposed to be much older in this movie. But then again, also, he's listed as being 10 hands tall, which is about 3.5 feet, which... just tells you that maybe in the future they're not so keen on accuracy. Point is, he's young enough to fight back, and breaks free of his binds. At least the physical ones. You know, this is Mad Max, and screw coming to terms with the things in the second movie. He's crazy, and his mental problems still bind him.
Stop running, Max! Stop running!
You let us die!
You let us die! You let us die!
No fucking idea who any of those are. A lot of the things in the movie are explained via tie-in comics, but there's nothing in the film that actually says what the hell I'm looking at. I was just looking at the TV the whole time like, did they forget and start thinking Mad Max was supposed to be a horror series? It's not his mental obstacles that prevent his escape, though. It's the fact that the place he's been taken to happens to be built atop a plateau, and, you know, fall damage and all that. So he's still captured, and the escape attempt amounts to showing us how he can't escape. No bother, it's time to move on to the real start of the events. As the place Max is being held, the Citadel, prepares for a big event. They're going to pick up some gas. Well, in post-apocalyptic worlds, I guess it's worth celebrating. But they make a big deal over the fact that the driver, Imperator Furiosa, played by Charlize Theron, is Employee of the Month. Or something like that, according to the Grand Leader, Immortan Joe, played by Hugh Keys-Byrne. You know, toe cutter from Mad Max 1.
I am your Redeemer! It is by my hand you will rise from the ashes of this world!
As with Bruce Spence in Mad Max 2 and 3, I'm pretty sure that Hugh is not playing the same character here. Though, perhaps if they did have Mel Gibson in this movie, maybe he was actually supposed to. We see what power Joe wields at the Citadel, as evidently they have a massive source of fresh water that they give the general people of the wasteland. How nice. Okay, that's enough water for these fuckers.
Do not, my friends, become addicted to water. It will take hold of you, and you will resent its absence.
Fair enough. I mean, yeah, they have a lot of water, but if you don't ration that out carefully, people go from being thirsty and uncomfortable to fucking dead. Pretty sure we're supposed to see him as cruel for not giving water when people are so obviously desperate for a drink, but all I can fault him with is a rather wasteful distribution method he's got set up. Either way, Furiosa heads out with a small band of war boys towards Gas Town, though it becomes clear she has other intentions. But she doesn't seem to think our important hide in the slightest. They've been driving for, what, 10 minutes and she's already veered off course.
Boss, we're not going to Gastown?
Motherfucker, Gastown's that way. We're going that way. The fuck do you think? Because she turned so quickly, though, this was well within view of the Citadel, and the jig is up just as soon as it's begun. Even though she could have driven all the way to Gastown and then turned east with all the smoke and chaos, it would have been a while before anyone realized what was going on, and even then it would be the people with her that would have to go back to the Citadel to relay the message that shit got fucked up, and then they'd have to send their war party after her instead of it just being practically instantaneous as soon as she leaves. I mean, I'm just thinking of how I would plan escaping from an oppressive regime. Joe instantly figures out that if she's not going for gas, then Furiosa must have broken into his extremely well-secured safe and stolen his wives from their confinement.
Where is she taking them?
She didn't take them, they begged her to go!
Evidently, the war boys consist entirely of Joe's progeny. It's kind of similar to how Genghis Khan fucked so many women that about 16 million men today are direct descendants of him. Anyway, the point is, how the hell did Joe manage to have that many kids banging like 5 women at a time? Now, we've already established that math isn't this movie's strong suit. Perhaps he also breeds with the other women up there, but they're only seen briefly being milked like cows. Either way, these ones were special because they're plot relevant, and thus, the war boys are rallied up to chase Furiosa down and return Joe's belongings. This introduces Nux, played by Nicholas Hoult, who is so devoted to Joe, he demands to go out and drive despite his failing health.
We take my blood bag! We take my blood bag and strap into the Lancer's perch!
It's got a muzzle on it! It's a raging feral!
That's right. High-octane crazy blood filling me up!
Reintroducing Max into the movie in a pretty awkward and convoluted way, but hey, he's back, so great. Also, just of note, I know they were trying to establish that the women are being objectified, and that is horribly oppressive, but, I mean, isn't Max being objectified here? And he is quite literally an accessory at this point. In any case, they strap Max to the car and prepare the war party, complete with a big badass dystopian science fiction equivalent of war drums. War drums attached to a wicked sound system with some electric guitar. An electric guitar that's got a motherfucking flamethrower triggered by a whammy bar. And it's at this point that every moviegoer must ask themselves the important question: do we need to think deep and hard about how this dystopian future where people are just scraping by with what little reserves of fuel has left, try and figure out how the hell they can manage to waste so much of it on pyrotechnics? Or if it's better to just say, fuck it, it's a Mad Max movie, let's have some fun. All things considered, I'll go ahead and vote for the latter of the two. Besides, we've got more important things to cover, such as the sudden appearance of incredibly spiky Tusken Raiders, fluent in Russian, who have set their sights on the oh-so-tempting tanker truck, and have also begun chasing Furiosa. Thus begins our first major chase scene that actually lasts longer than a few seconds. Also, about all those traditional effects that everyone keeps raving about. It looks good, and don't get me wrong, it looks fantastic. Except it's not 100% traditional effects. Most of the scenes with huge groups of cars are actually composites of many taken with a few cars in each. Similarly, a lot of explosions are either superimposed or entirely CGI, and of course the bodies going flying aren't real, though if they were, I'd be complaining about that too. According to the filmmakers themselves, practically every single shot in this movie has some digital effects in it one way or another. I mean, hell, Charlize Theron has a green cast over her left arm, so they had to digitally remove that and replace it with some stuff somewhere.
You want her to cut her goddamn arm off?
Well, have you heard of method acting?
You're insane!
I want to be clear here, though. I'm not saying the effects are bad. Honestly, this is one of the best looking movies I've seen in a while, and even though it does use digital effects, it only uses just enough to enhance the real things that are already going on. Either that or it creates a giant fucking CGI sandstorm out of nowhere with a huge fucking electrical tornado that blows shit up in it. Win-win either way.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
But despite the War Boys and Tusken Raiders not being able to keep up with Furiosa, quite especially as she dared the sandstorm, Nux is still in pursuit, as well as Max still strapped to his car and alive, somehow. Might not be for too much longer, though, as Nux decides the best course of action is to go kamikaze on the tanker, which would kill the wives, but we never accuse Nux of thinking things through. Max has escaped his bonds, though, and doesn't feel like dying today, preventing the flare from touching the gasoline. By the end of the struggle, the flare never hit the gas, so they're perfectly fine. Even though, as I pointed out in the Demolition Man review, it's the fumes that ignite, not the liquid. And even if the fire needed to touch the liquid, the magnesium drips off the flare, so it still did. So, that's, fuck it, it's gonna be hard enough to explain how the hell Max survived the crash. Especially since not only did he live, but he's not even injured as a result of it. The biggest problem he's got is the fact that he's still chained to Nux. Fortunately, there's a handy-dandy sawed-off shotgun in the wreckage, which should be enough to get this motherfucker. But he was foiled again by yet another homage. Therefore, he has no choice but to carry Nux's heavy ass around until he can get some bolt cutters. Fortunately, he happens to find out that Furiosa didn't just keep running for the hills, and instead stopped long enough that he can walk up to them relatively easily. Here we find out her party consists of harmless-looking, unarmed women. Oh well, time to ask for help. This is where dialogue would really help you out, Max. Like, oh, hi there, I don't mean to be a bother, but you see, I have a war boy chained to my face. Could you please bring those bolt cutters over and help me with this? Anything? No, just gonna point the shotgun at them and just gesture? Okay. To be fair, he does eventually manage to get across the point that he'd like them to get the chain off his head. While still managing to come off as crazily as possible. Just Max, words, vocabulary. It is handy when you are trying to communicate. Apparently he must have grunted something wrong, because shock of all shocks, they think he's a bad guy. This results in us watching these 6 relatively well-rested women get their asses soundly kicked by an exhausted, dehydrated madman and his anemic, barely conscious friend. Oh yeah, Nux is still alive, despite Max disconnecting the flow of blood. Point is, amidst all of this, they still don't say a word. Then again, there's not much of a chance for chit-chat when you find out the war boys are closing in on you. Probably because Furiosa decided to park the truck there and wait long enough for them to do that. No idea why she did that. I mean, yeah, they got a chance to take a shower, but how useful is that when you're just going to be running for your life and pissing your pants a second later? With Nux awake and Max in charge of the situation, he tells Nux to cut the chain. Even though it was the only means of keeping his blood bag in place, he happily complies in a state of euphoria over the grand treatment they will surely get as they capture Furiosa and the wives. Not that Max cares, he just shoots one of the wives in the leg, and without a word, he steals the rig and drives off. This also doesn't work because guess what? Furiosa had it specifically set up with a kill switch that can only be circumvented with a specific sequence. With that in mind, Max begrudgingly lets her back in the rig. In a way that looks strangely like witnessing a reverse carjacking. Though at this point, I am really confused as to why the fuck Max is even in the rig with them. The war boys are after the rig and the women. Max was just trying to escape. He can do this at any time by just running north or south. Either way, their adventure hits another snag when yet another road gang appears on the horizon.
And there's the people eater himself. Coming to count the cost.
I understand having a big banker as a bad guy in 2015, but in a Mad Max movie, as the leader of a Mad Max gang, in an actual, like, serious film, not a shitty SNL skit. Seriously? No time to pay them too much mind, though. There's a problem with one of the tires. So Max volunteers to shift gears from holding all the women up at gunpoint to scaling the rig as a mobile handyman. Problem is, while the truck was slowed down earlier, the sick and dying Nux managed to chase it down and jump aboard, and is ready to take down Furiosa for the glory of Immortan Joe. Not that he gets too far before the women gang up on him and use their special ability of nagging to take him down.
You're an old man's battle fodder, killing everyone and everything!
We're not to blame!
And who killed the world?
lady, Apocalypse was decades ago. He was born after that. It's pretty definitive reasoning he didn't have shit to do with it. Everyone responsible is probably all dead by now. Move the fuck on. It seems, though, Furiosa's escape path was set up in such a way that she has a fake deal of sorts with yet another faction in the wasteland, the, Other Guys. No idea how or when this deal was made, as that isn't explained in the movie. More importantly, they can already see the fan has been pre-shut up.
You said a few vehicles in pursuit. Maybe. We count 3 war parties.
Yeah, well, I got unlucky.
Well, considering the situation, shouldn't he, hurry up with the motions of the fake gas exchange or something? Or at least, since the guy you're talking to is over 100 feet away, don't whisper? Not really sure what a plan was here, but stopping at all seemed like a dumb idea anyway, considering it just means they're sitting still for a little while getting shot at, instead of having been moving from the start and getting shot at. Eventually, the Rasta bikers blow up a chunk of rock to block their escape, but of course did it just too late to stop Max and Furiosa, but just soon enough to cut off all their pursuers. Ah well, at least this gives Nux, who is still alive and really not needing that blood bag at all, a chance to catch up with the war boys and show proof he got on their rig, so he gets to join the great Immortan Joe in the first car over the rubble in the pursuit.
All this for a family squabble. Healthy babies.
Makes you wonder why we're even chasing them. There's a problem. I ain't got shit else to do. And me either. As the chase continues, Joe gets Nux close enough to get back on the rig. Giving him a gun and a shiny chrome smile, Joe fills Nux with determination. Now's his chance to really impress Daddy. Mediocre? That's giving him way too much credit there. So it's just up to Joe and his monster truck to get the job done. Problem is he doesn't want to damage his property, so trying to stop the rig without crashing is a major pain in the ass. Also, sudden rock of death! Don't worry though, Joe's pregnant wife has super maternal ninja powers, allowing her to dodge that obstacle with ease. Problem is, even though she just showed off her unbelievable agility, that wound on her leg where the bullet grazed her, it's just too much, and she slips and falls because if she's going to die, it's going to be Max's fault. At least her body flying out the side did stop Joe in his tracks, giving the rest of them the chance to escape. Though we see one breaking down later saying she's going back cause all this shit ain't worth it, while the other wives tell her it's not right that they should be treated like things. Ignoring that everyone in the Citadel is treated like things. Forget that. The point is, when Capable, played by Riley Keough, heads to the back of the rig to make sure things are in order, she finds Nux huddled in a corner. Turns out disappointing Joe has left him in a bit of a slump. And yeah, he may have been raised since birth to live and die for Immortan Joe, but this lady just ran her fingers on his lips, so fuck that loyalty. However, before they get much further, day for night sets in, right when they get the truck stuck in the mud. Then, wouldn't you know it, I'm wondering if we're eventually going to get a shot of the war party coming in and the guitars playing Freebird. No bother, they have enough time to set up a couple of elaborate traps while they slowly pull the rig through the mudlands. Unfortunately, their pursuers are undeterred and closing in. This gives us an excuse for Furiosa to objectify Max as a shooting bench.
Don't breathe.
And yeah, she could have got even better stability by just going prone with the damn gun, but why be smart about things when you have the chance to blow out some guy's eardrums? Nux is also helping Furiosa out at this point, because, lady touched his lips and all that. They eventually lose the guys on their tail, because Max goes in on foot and somehow manages to blow them up and take all their shit. In any case, this means they can finally leave the curse of day for night. What the hell was any of that about? Who are these characters? And except for the googly eyes, that was Toe Cutter, I know that, but the rest of that, what the fuck? As usual, Max's madness is inconsequential anyway. Besides, now that they're through the mudlands, they should be running into the green place with the many mothers any time now. Before they find anything to that effect, though, they happen across a tower with a lone naked woman screaming for help.
That's bait.
I'm just glad Max didn't say it was a trap. Imagine the image I have to put up for that one. No, I wasn't thinking of Akbar. Furiosa walks out of the rig at this point and announces her name, her parents, and who they were in the old society. This reveals the fact that the woman in the tower is one of the many mothers, Valkyrie, played by Megan Gale. She believes Furiosa instantly, and they catch up on things.
How long has it been? 7,000 days? Plus the ones I don't remember.
A little over 19 years, which, if when the Persian Gulf War happened, immediately tribes and gangs broke out in the wasteland, and she was kidnapped on day one, Max still looks way too fucking young for this timeline to make any sense. Slightly bad news about the matriarchal society, though. Turns out the mudlands they went through on the way here was where the green place used to be. Climate change is a bitch, ain't it? Therefore, after suffering many raids and the complete loss of their agricultural support, pretty much everyone died except for the small band of old women who still remain. Well, shit. Thus, as day for night sets in, Furiosa decides their best bet is to cross the salt flats and get as far away from the Citadel as possible.
If we leave the rig here and load the motorcycles up with as much as we can maybe ride for 160 days.
But I know this movie has proven that it ain't good at math, and if you travel 12 hours out of every 24 hours, in about 67 days you could walk across Australia. The long way. That's the plan, though, as come morning the group heads out. Max knows better than the women's, though, and pulls out in front to take control of the group. He thinks their best bet is to actually turn the fuck around and head straight back to the Citadel, as the chances of fighting off several war parties are far greater than surviving the salt flats.
But I guarantee you that 160 days ride that way, there's nothing but salt.
Actually, if they're traveling at 100 miles per hour, 12 hours out of each day, on average, heading that way for 160 days, they'll circle the Earth 7.5 times. They agree with Max on this one without any real protest at all, and as the rig turns around and heads back towards the Citadel, the climax kicks in. One of those with over 20 minutes left in the movie, so you know it's gonna kick all the asses. Considering practically the whole movie up to this point has been a chase scene, there's not much difference in the cinematography come the climax, but the sheer scope of things is certainly enormous, and easily the largest scale vehicular action in any Mad Max movie. Also, while the remaining few of the many mothers are still around and fighting, they aren't Max or Furiosa, so they are very much expendable. And I mean very expendable. While most of the cast of characters on the side of good have been relatively invulnerable for the last 100 minutes, the rate at which the old women are picked off almost feels like the movie's trying to make up for that. Speaking of making up for lost time, it looks like the rebuilt and redestroyed V8 Interceptor has been rebuilt again! Only it's in the hands of the war boys. And it's promptly blown up again. I'm starting to wonder, out of all of the shots of the V8 Interceptor in this movie, what percentage of them are of it being destroyed? Point is, they pull out all the stops in the final stretch. It's one big screen orgy of cars and explosions and death and sweeping landscapes of violence and pain. Considering it's a heroic tale, though, predictably, Furiosa makes her way into Immortan Joe's ride, and while Max is busy dealing with the mid-boss, she goes in for the kill.
Remember me?
So that's, hardly a definitive way to kill someone. Plenty of people have survived having their face ripped off. And even if that isn't toe cutter there, it's still obvious that Immortan Joe has survived far worse than that. But he's dead! Look, the lady says so. Therefore, they just have to escape the remaining pursuers.
When you're across safe, I'll jam the throttle and follow you.
Translation: I'm about to die and we're supposed to feel emotional about this. Less than 1 minute later, when everyone else has made it onto Joe's monster truck, mid-boss Rictus Erectus, played by Nathan Jones, drops down and rips the fucking intake right off the truck. Therefore, we can get our sad, poetic car crash of self-sacrifice that manages to block off all remaining pursuers and buy the heroes the time they need. And if you didn't know this movie was also filmed in 3D, the ridiculous orgy of CGI being thrown in your face right now should make that pretty obvious. Point of it all is, after all of that, happy ending! They return to the Citadel, still held by a shit ton of war boys, but they have Immortan Joe's corpse, and for some reason, everyone around them is incredibly happy about that. With Joe gone, his widows release the waters for everyone, completely ignoring any and all concepts of conservation, so it's probably going to be a couple of weeks before they completely fuck their chances of surviving here too, but that's not important. Furiosa and the wives get to rise up the citadel, while Max disappears into the crowd towards the next adventure. That is probably best not to even try to make sense of. And yeah, there was this thing where Furiosa was losing blood and Max's conveniently established transfusion powers came to save the day, but this review has gone on long enough without getting into that much detail. But anyway, that was Mad Max Fury Road. And it is a lot of fun to watch, despite the fact that it has lots of problems. Visually, the movie is absolutely spectacular. The landscape shots, the hybrid of traditional effects with digital effects to garner the best of both worlds, and the drastically different styles addressed for all factions involved this time around. This shouldn't be too surprising, as the whole movie was conceived from a visual standpoint. It said the director wanted the film to be understood in different countries and cultures without the need to translate it, kind of like a Roadrunner cartoon. The problem with that is that the plot ended up with the depth of a Roadrunner cartoon. The funny thing is, when I read up on and researched the movie for the review, there was an ass ton more information than you find in the film itself. A lot of it is available out there in tie-in comics, but the problem with that is I judge a movie based on the movie, and I feel that it should be able to support itself on its own. Plot-wise, it does that, but when it comes to where the real depth of the movie lies, the world, we start having other problems. Pretty much every faction present has a long, winding backstory, and lots of detail given elsewhere. They're interesting to see in Fury Road, but not explained in the slightest. In a way, with the many factions present and the complete lack of exposition dealing with them, they come off like a cameo appearance of characters we've never heard of. I can't geek out over a name drop if I don't know who the fuck they are. Still though, Fury Road set out to be a movie that has a simple plot that was easy to follow, and a massive scale of vehicular action with kick-ass visuals. By all counts, it succeeded. The lack of depth to the story might hurt its chances of being highly regarded in the future, but the very deep, if not detailed within the movie itself, setting, make up for that on some level. Overall, Fury Road is a blast to watch and keeps you interested, but squanders this a bit on a story you really don't have to pay attention to, coming in at 4 electric flamethrower guitars out of 5. It's not that there's no plot, like some have said, it's that it's really hard to explain how the hell Drive the Truck and Save the Women's managed to stretch out into 2 hours and become the longest Mad Max movie ever made in the process. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I've been Shado, and remember, I live! I die! I live again! Yeah, I was supposed to have, like, silver spray, but they didn't have any at the shop, so, you know, you work with what you got in an apocalypse.
I got his boot! I got the blood bag's boot! Take